All right. Well, I'm excited about today to be here with Gary Stevenson. Gary is really a gift to the orthopedic industry, especially to the startup community, and has just been a absolute powerhouse in driving value for the early stage companies that are seeking capital and seeking a venue. And so it's a pleasure to have you, Gary. Thanks for joining us on OTW Pod.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. And I couldn't have done any of those things without the help of a lot of other people, especially for our conference, which we're going to be talking about. Loyal sponsors like the DeAngelis Group have been really important to helping us put together a successful event every year. So we'll talk about that more later, but I just want to share the credit for some of the good things we've done together rather than I've done on my own.
Well, you've carried the load for sure. Um, but why don't you just give us a little bit of background? Because I think a lot of us just know you as, the face of MNVC, and now Healthpoint Capital. But I think that the really sort of the origin story of how you even got into venture capital, and I think would be really interesting for our audience. And you're obviously a Memphis guy, and there's deep ties to orthopedic industry there. But give us a little bit of a journey for you.
Yeah, so I grew up in Missouri, one of six children, and went to the University of Missouri for my undergraduate degree. I'm an accountant by training, CPA. I started my career in public accounting at Arthur Andersen, which is a firm that doesn't even exist anymore. 4 years there, and then went to work for an audit client, Abbott Labs. And Abbott was my first experience in the medical device industry. I lived in Chicago, and while I was there, earned a master's degree at Northwestern. And so I spent 8 years at Abbott, started out in finance, moved my way into marketing position, and then ultimately into strategic planning, and really did a lot of um, in licensing transactions and a few acquisitions while I was at Abbott. But that gave me the taste of what it was like to be involved in medical device. It also gave me the taste of what it was like to do deals, right? And so when I left Abbott, I joined A.G. Edwards in St. Louis and then Morgan Keegan in Memphis, Tennessee, to write research on the medical device industry and then ultimately to be an investment banker. I was head of healthcare investment banking at Morgan Keegan when it was acquired in 2001 by Regions Financial. That summer, I took some time off after the acquisition. And on 9/11, I was actually at home without a job. And 2 months later, started MB Venture Partners, a venture capital firm based here in Memphis, where we raised over a period of about four funds, raised $130 million of committed capital that we invested 80% of which we invested in the musculoskeletal space, owing in part to what you just said a minute ago, that Memphis is kind of a hot spot in the musculoskeletal medical device industry. Um, and so we decided to focus a disproportionate amount of our capital in that space. It turned out that a couple of the medical device companies here in Memphis were limited partners in that fund, in those funds, I should say. And so we went about the business of making investments. We made an early investment in biomimetic therapeutics out of Nashville, which developed a bone regeneration product derived from platelet-derived growth factor, PDGF, that ultimately became the product we now know. It's owned by Stryker. The company Biomimetic went public and then was acquired by Wright, now owned by Stryker. But the product is now called their starts with an A, Augment product. So it's a foot and ankle fusion product. That was a really early success for MB Venture Partners, and we had others. We were investors in Salient Surgical, Cayenne Medical, acquired by Zimmer Biomet, Salient acquired by Medtronic. And then we invested in Memphis-based Crossroads, and that's where I came to know the folks at Healthpoint Capital. We had a successful outcome in that deal together, and when we did, Healthpoint was looking to expand their team, offered me a position which allowed me to jump from the venture side of the business, early stage, to later stage investment opportunities, but still in this same musculoskeletal space. I beg your pardon. So that whole time, It's all been about musculoskeletal investments at various stages. And somewhere along the way, we decided pretty early on, actually, at MB Venture Partners, to host this Musculoskeletal New Ventures Conference, the MNVC that you alluded to. I see your guitars back there in the background, by the way. I've got mine over my right shoulder as well. Um, and together, you and I worked together on that for, it's been, this will be our 23rd annual event this year. I know you and I have worked on together on more than half of those. Um, and so the Musculoskeletal Conference is celebrating its 23rd year this year. And we'll have another 40 companies or so presenting at the MNBC, plus some exciting panels. So we can talk more about that. But hopefully that long-winded answer gives you what you were looking for, and maybe too much
No, not at all. So
as background.
I'll tell you what, I think it's such a unique perspective for someone in the venture community to come from the industry. And what I typically see are people who are all finance, all, really focused on that industry, and they're sort of agnostic about specialty. And so having that insight and that experience and the depth of that just perspective in the industry of MSK, it's a superpower, and it really does distinguish you and separate you from kind of the rest of the people who, they look at the orthopedic industry as one of many, and and they even have their own stack ranking on where they place orthopedics. So from the perspective of the industry, to have a firm and a managing partner like yourself that is wholly focused and committed to orthopedics, it was completely unique. So I credit you with that, because you set yourself apart, and you made a commitment to an industry and to a specialty. And I think that's what makes this meeting so special. I've gone to LSI many times. I know there's other meetings that do similar events trying to help companies raise capital, but you stand alone as the only dedicated to musculoskeletal. And it's not a secret. The whole idea of MSK Innovations was really a follow on to what you've been doing. And I credit you with that, because during COVID, you launched it during those a couple years where you did it all virtually, and it was great. And I mean, it was a lot more companies and a lot more to do than what we do on MSK Innovations, which is just 3 companies each month. So it was a more, it was a heavier lift for sure, but it was the sort of the proof point that this was something that we ought to be doing. And so, I applaud you for that. You've not deviated from that for 23 years. You are still focused exclusively on MSK. And even in my own search firm, the DeAngelis Group, that has been our distinctive. We only do MSK, and have for 25 years. So, um, as you kind of thought that through, how did you sort of decide that that was an important distinction for you to focus on? Because it really did mean you're saying no to everybody else.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think you probably have a similar answer. So when you focus on something, I think you just end up doing it better than a lot of other folks do. Um, I got the idea really early on from Bob Compton. Bob was one of the early investors, and then a part of the management team at Medtronic. Well, actually, it was sophomore Danik, we now know as Medtronic, spine division. He was an investor in our first fund. He asked me early on what he thought our distinguishing feature would be. So, very much the same kind of thinking you're just describing there, Drue. What would be the reason why people would want to, you know, raise money from MD Venture Partners? And I think he persuaded me that domain expertise, relationships, they really matter. Um, Companies that are at the early stages, like we were doing at MD Venture Partners, don't have a lot of their own internal domain expertise or relationships sometimes with the major strategics. And we did, right? We had, strategics that were investors in our fund. And here we are in Memphis. We thought, we have a pretty good shot at being relevant, um, and developing some domain expertise and relationships around an industry like musculoskeletal than we would, say, cardiovascular, which is not in Memphis at all. So I think that strategy bore out because if you look at the looked at the term sheet rather, the press release, if you look at the press release that Biomimetic released when we led their Series B round of financing, they said in that press release, the reason why they chose our firm was because of this domain expertise and relationships. And I actually didn't write that press release, if you want to know the truth. But I knew we were onto something because we got a high quality deal there that company went from our investment in the Series B to a Series C, went public, and we sold it. And it was a 4-year turn. And I knew we were onto something
Wow.
if we, yeah. And so that was a high quality deal that a small firm like us should probably not expect a shot at. I know it's in our state. It was in Nashville. I'm in Memphis. Um, but still, we probably wouldn't have had a shot at that deal if we didn't have that domain expertise, those relationships. And I started to notice also in those early days, and I'm still seeing it today at Healthpoint, that we're on the boards of these companies. People are counting on us for good advice. They could hire consultants to do it, but they would pay the consultants, and then the consultants would leave. No, I'm not disparaging consultants. For all of you consultants out there, we love you too. But the consultants would collect their consulting fee and move on to the next engagement. And whether it worked or not was kind of irrelevant to the consultant because they were on the next engagement already. But the venture capitalist and private equity guy, like I'm doing today, if we give a piece of advice, we're hanging around to find out if it works. And if it doesn't, we have our own capital to lose. So we've got skin in the game. So I look at those cross currents, I guess, and see that the really relevant thing that matters to startup companies, whether they're in the early stages or even later stages, what they're looking for is the domain expertise. And the companies that are big companies out there that attend our conference or we have relationships with, they're looking for deal flow. So with those relationships, we can kind of help the early stage companies de-risk through some stage of their development and ultimately become an acquisition candidate for the major strategics out there. That's worked for us over the years. Medtronic and Smith and Nephew and Zimmer and J&J have all Stryker, Wright Medical. They've all acquired companies that have been in the MD Venture Partners or Healthpoint Capital portfolio. And we'd like to think that it wasn't just our capital that helped those companies achieve that. It was the domain expertise and relationships we had along the way to help make
Yeah,
it happen.
that's huge. So I'm curious, with your diverse background on the buy side in M&A and also as a venture capitalist, 23 years focusing on just the orthopedic or MSK space. Undoubtedly, you have developed the ability to recognize the patterns that lead to a successful outcome. So, could you just share some of those musings about what you've learned and what you look at and you're like, hard pass, that's not going to fly, or you're very concerned. They may prove you wrong, but just anything that you've learned that might be helpful to anyone who's in any frame of a startup, just to take something from this and learn from your
Yeah,
experience.
probably the biggest thing is to start with a focus on an unmet need. May have to pivot once or twice or three times on how you're going to meet that need. So I've seen some companies sometimes come and say, we've got this really creative invention and we're just looking for a problem to solve with it. And that generally speaking ends poorly, not only for the entrepreneur, but for the investors who back it. Instead, if you starting with the idea in mind that there's an unmet need out there, and we think we might have version 1 of a way to solve that unmet need, and we might have version 2 and version 3 in the pipeline. My experience has been over those 23 years, 24 years, that's a better way to, I think, come up with a successful startup company. You stay focused on the unmet needs of the customers. I'm talking about surgeons, but I'm also talking about patients. the unmet need of surgeons and patients is something that you stay focused on that. I think you have a really good shot at being successful, even if you have to pivot once or twice along the way to get there.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So how important in your decision criteria is the leadership of that company?
Pretty important. At the early stages, sometimes what you're looking for is, really relevant engineering or maybe clinical experience to really understand. We've financed companies where surgeons have been founders, and Biomimetic is a good example. It was founded by a periodontal surgeon and had a successful outcome, and he was still CEO when the company was acquired by Wright Medical. So, it can be that at the very early stages, the engineering talent or the clinical side of it can be really, really important. Later on, sometimes when you're really scaling up an enterprise, sometimes the sales and marketing experience is what it takes to get a company over the finish line. So, evaluating the talent at the appropriate stage is important. And sometimes people can grow into and be the successful entrepreneur that goes from start to finish. And sometimes, as the company transitions into a more commercial phase, it's important to have leadership there that has that commercial background, sales and marketing, or even finance, but mostly sales and marketing. So, in our experience, the team that is successful at the early stages may not be the same team that's going to be successful at the end, but we've had several companies in the portfolio where it's worked out just fine for the founding
Mhm.
entrepreneur to take it all the way. But I think the point of it is to answer your question. Um, what people get wrong sometimes is they're too slow to make decisions on team, and nobody ever. Um, I've never met anybody yet who said we got a little quick with deciding to make a change on our management team. And that's not just at the CEO level, that may be up and down the spectrum. This is right in your wheelhouse. Almost nobody ever says, do they, Drue? Nobody ever says, gee, I think we got a little quick there. We let somebody go or made a change on the team sooner than we should have. Usually what they say is, we waited too long and
Yeah.
we should have done something sooner. So um, that's my experience with teams. It's a good thing when you found an entrepreneur who can take it all the way, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, I think that what I see a lot of times, to your point, is that companies do have cycles and stages that generally require a different, skill set for. That kind of that 0 to 10 million. Now some people can go beyond that, but
Right.
it's not the same skill set to take you from 10 to 50 in many cases and 50 beyond. It's a different tool set. It's a different, level of general management and sophistication that oftentimes the more people who really excel at really staying in their lane and focusing on the smaller parts really generally have a difficult time sort of widening their aperture and managing a broader set of challenges. So it's not uncommon, as you just said, for someone to kind of hit a wall. And to your point also, it's more common than not that people wait for them to figure it out, see if they can adapt, and then go through a long and painstaking process of realizing that they're just probably not going to be able to. And then the process starts to find someone who can. And by that time, you're several months, if not, a year beyond that kind of ideal milestone, or it's really probably was a better choice.
Yeah.
And I work with some people who are really forward thinking. Nick Pachuta is one who serves on a number of boards, and I've found Nick to be really that visionary who can see well beyond kind of where they're stuck and start to make some really great sort of advice around how to sort of flatten that curve. But it's up to that founder many times to realize it for themselves and to be willing to relinquish that type of control. It's tough. I mean, you're dealing with
It's
people
tough.
and, you know, they've got so much invested and, as an investor though, how do you play a role in that? I mean, it's push or pull. Does it depend on how much equity? Obviously, having a PE where you've got controlling interest is a different ballgame, right?
It is. You're right. So, my most of my career has been in the venture side where I've been one of several investors, none of us had the control to do it anything on our own. But as a board, we came together and had a common economic interest in sorting it out, right? And so, even though there was no one person who made the call on any change on a team, um, there was a group of us all very aligned because we all own shares. Maybe we own shares at different prices, but we all own shares at what we hope would be really valuable in the future. So we were very aligned to helping make that happen. So as a group, we make decision. In the case of Healthpoint, we do have controlling positions more often than not, actually always. And so we uh, we might be a little bit more of one voice there, but the dynamic is the same. We all have to talk about whether the person that's currently leading the organization is the right person to do so or not, or the person who's just leading our sales team is the right person, or the person who's leading our R&D effort. It's not always just the CEO. Um, so I think that's what some of your observations have been right on the commercial side that you can use because it's so easy, right, to look at it and say, well, revenue is a certain number. So from a 0 to 10, it's one skill set. Maybe from 10 to 15 or 20, it's a different skill set. You know what? Drawing on a little larger pool, not just the MB Venture Partners portfolio or even the Healthpoint Capital portfolio, but drawing on the larger pool of 30 or 23 years of hosting the MNBC, I get to see a lot more companies, right? On average, there's 20 to 30 companies. This year will be 40 that are presenting every year. And over 20 some years, I've seen a lot of companies come through the MNBC, right? So maybe 500 companies in total. I had a few of those come back last year and sit on a panel. There were three of them that had presented before, and all three of those had reached successful outcomes. Um, one of them was a real true founder, right? It was Vernon Hardigan. He was one of the three co-founders of Crossroads, one of our portfolio companies. And he was CEO at the time it was acquired. So he, from inception to exit, now that was only 7 years. So he had a really successful start to exit, but he remained, one of the three co-founders and CEO at the time of the exit. The other two guys that were on that panel, Kevin Rocco from BioRes. I mean, that was a turn. That was a restart of a prior company that had actually the prior company had presented at MNBC. And then Aaron Smith from Ardilon was not an original founder of Ardilon. So those were two out of three that really were not the part of the founding team. And so maybe I mean, I know that's only 3 data points, but that probably is pretty close to what we should expect for, founding entrepreneurs to take it all the way from inception to a successful outcome.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely. I think that your observations sort of check out in my experience that, you kind of, there are those who can take it from, that early stage beyond. But I even think, if you're going to exit as you did with Crossroads, it had Vernon, um, needed to do an IPO and then run a public company. He might not even want to do that job, you know.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, that's right.
you might need a
That's a
different,
totally
yes,
different thing right there.
right,
Exactly. And I think you know this, most med device companies, they don't typically exit through IPOs. Most med device companies become acquisition targets for larger companies.
yeah,
Biotech, by the way, just not we're talking about biotech, but biotech is usually the other way around. A lot of biotech companies do have the opportunity when the window is open to do an IPO. It's less common in the med tech space. So so you see a lot of biotech entrepreneurs who start companies and may take them all the way to a successful IPO. But most med tech companies are looking for a strategic partner to make the acquisition, and so it's not as typical that you need somebody to running your company, preparing yourself for an IPO. There's some exceptions we know about, and a couple of them were that just happened in the last few months
right,
were presenters at MNBC's past, right? I mean, Mike Cordonier from Carlsmed, and then the folks from Shoulder Innovations, Rob Ball, they've both been presenters at MNBC's past. And those guys were running the companies for quite some time, founders, you know, now public company CEOs. So we wish
Yeah.
them all the best of luck. I couldn't be more excited for them unless I owned them.
Of course.
Hey everyone, TJ Halverson here. Did you know that a mediocre hire can cost your MSK company over $1 million? While other recruiters coach candidates to say what you want to hear, we find leaders that actually deliver. The DeAngelis Group has over 25 years of transparent executive search. So de-risk your next hire by contacting us at orthospinesearch.com.
So, walk us through kind of the typical MNVC. You have sort of a format. How is it laid out, and what makes? And I'll give my thoughts after you kind of share the layout and structure, because I do think it's certainly my favorite conference of the year. And but lay it out for people who've never been there. Why should they want to be there? Who would want to be there?
Yeah, so my comments will be kind of targeted really towards three audiences. It's the entrepreneurs that present, and some of whom just attend to kind of see what's happening in the industry. Some of whom are thinking about presenting at next year's MNBC, and they're attending this year to kind of check it out. So that's on the entrepreneur side. And that's about a third of our audience. A third of our audience is on the investor side. So those are venture capital firms for early stage investments, private equity firms for later stage investments, angel investors, family offices, anybody who's looking to make an equity investment or debt investment in a musculoskeletal startup. This is a good place. You're going to see 40 companies in a day and a half. So a pretty good reason for you to want to come and see that. And then on the strategic side, that's probably the remaining one third or so. It's the business development teams from the major strategics. So Medtronic has been a sponsor of MNBC since inception. This will be their 23rd year. So they've been a sponsor for every year. And they often, being here in Memphis, send over their business development team to scout out anything that's happening in spine, as do the other major strategics, Stryker, J&J, Zimmer Biomet, ConMed, and others. Sometimes we even have them on panels so people can hear from them about what's happening. So that's really our three audiences largely. There's a few others that come as well. But the three major targets for us are, this idea of entrepreneurs who are presenting, and the investors and strategics who are looking to do deals. So it's a pretty symbiotic environment for folks to be looking for things. And of course, J&J, for example, just to emphasize your point, just picking J&J, for example, J&J's got a lot of operating units, so does Stryker. But they're sending their business development team that is targeted for spine and orthopedics to MNBC. So it's the right audience. What we do at MNBC, we end up with about 200 people as a result of that. Our venue is special. You've been there many times. I thought maybe one of the best pictures of the venue was TJ's that he just posted on LinkedIn earlier this week. Just at 200 people that are there, really great venue. And we only do 2 rooms at a time, Drue. So if you're presenting in one room or the other room, you're going to end up with, on average, I mean, everybody can do the math, 200 divided by 2, 100 people. And I go to a lot of conferences. You mentioned one earlier, but I go to a lot of conferences where the room might have 20 or 30 people in it. Here, you're going to get 100 people, and you're going to get 100 people who are looking for musculoskeletal deals. It's in the name of the conference. We're not hiding anything about what we're doing here. It's pretty straightforward. So the agenda this year will have 40 companies presenting. And of the 40, there'll be a nice mix of early and late stage. I'm very deliberate about that. There'll be a nice mix of companies that have never presented at MNBC before, and there'll be some that'll be coming back for an update. And then the third thing, and this is probably the most important, is that we'll have a nice mix of spine, enabling technologies, sports medicine, trauma, and general ortho, including orthobiologics, all on the agenda so that everybody can get a chance to see something. I learned early on that some of the spine companies are not so interested in ortho, and some of the ortho companies are not so interested in spine. So we get a nice mix of companies that are presenting every year to make sure that we even kind of line them up so that we might have 4 spine companies, back to back to back in the same room, so that to make it easier for our business development colleagues that are attending to see them all, right? So that way they're not in both rooms at the same time. So it's, when you've done something for 20 some years, you learn some lessons that make it better the next year. And those are some of the reasons why I think folks would want to come to MNBC and see the 40 companies that are presenting in a day and a half. Bring a colleague so they can sit in the other room while you're in one room, and that way you won't miss anything. And that's what the MNBC is kind of all about. We've had a lot of really exciting companies presented MNBC's past, and that's why you want to come and see even the early stage ones, because they aren't early stage forever.
Right. Yeah. So what you just said about the conference is distinctive. Having, like I said, been to other conferences, I won't name them, but um, it is kind of it's certainly a challenge, because if you're a MSK or ortho junkie like myself, you really don't want to be sitting
And me
through
too.
urology and cardiology and vascular and DNA testing presentations. And when it's kind of a all come scenario, you really are running down the hall and up the stairs to the hoping to catch the beginning of the next one that applies to your particular interests. And so there is no other conference that has such a concentration, and it is run so smoothly. I credit you and Amy, maybe Amy more than you, but just with the way it is so completely predictable, and you set it up to where there's time to get to the other room. Um, and you've also infused it with plenty of time for networking, which I always find to be refreshing, because you're with your people there, and you're able to really meet people and have meaningful conversations, and really expand your network, which brings value, that it carries on well beyond the end of the conference. So it is a super well run conference, and there are really meaningful relationships that result from your time being there. So
Yeah, you're really kind about that. One of the things to throw into the mix there is we also offer our presenting companies, they get 20 minutes at the podium. And with 20 minutes at the podium, as compared to a lot of other conferences where you get basically 6 minutes or maybe 10 minutes at the podium, you just don't have a chance to go into anything in depth. Again, we're a focused event, focused only on musculoskeletal disease, so our audience is very musculoskeletal centric. They don't need that first slide where you're talking always about, the size of the market or what have you. They kind of know that already. So they want to get into the meat of what you're talking about. And with 20 minutes at the podium, you get 15 to 17 minutes for your slide deck to do 3 to 5 minutes of Q&A at the end. It's just a lot more in depth that I think, again, the feedback we get from the investors who attend, the feedback we get from the strategics who attend, and definitely the feedback we get from the entrepreneurs, that more time at the podium per company is better. And that's always worked for us. If we were putting on the MNBC for a profit, we would make the slots smaller so we could get more companies per hour and we could sell more presentation slots. But the MNBC has never been, about generating a profit for Healthpoint now or for MB Venture Partners before. It was about putting together an event where we think that it's a good thing for for our industry. We think it's a good thing for our city. And we think ultimately it's a good thing for the firms that I've been with, both at MB Venture Partners and Healthpoint Capital, because we're looking for deal flow. And we're looking for opportunities to identify investment opportunities that are appealing. And so there's an alignment of interests here that maybe is a little more direct. an alignment of interest between what we're looking for, what other investors are looking for, what the entrepreneurs are looking for. They're looking for money, what the strategics are looking for. They're looking for deals. There's an alignment of interest there, and nobody in the process is trying to make a buck off of it, right? So
Mhm.
what I'm saying is the industry conference is not trying to make a buck off of it. That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
What a concept.
Yeah,
Um,
what a concept. I mean, it just seems like, and again, if this was me trying to have a side hustle to make a lot of money, or if this was me on a vanity project, this probably would have been a long time ago, right? It's sponsors like the DeAngelis Group and Medtronic and others that have been so loyal every year that keep coming back that tell us we must be doing something right. And the attendees, sometimes I look out there in the audience and I see some of the same people out there that were there back in the early days when we first started. So we must be doing something right to get repeat um, attendance every year, sponsorship every year, and we always have way more companies interested in presenting than we have available slots. And I'm sure you have the same problem with your MSK Innovations thing. Is there's just a lot of really good companies out there looking for a chance to um, to tell their story, and they just want a chance. And
yeah.
you're giving them a venue to do it just like we are.
So there's another distinctive about MNVC compared to other conferences. Um, and that is, it's been said, and part of the reason we started MSK Innovations pitch platform that's virtual is because when I talked to more than a handful of CEOs that have presented at other conferences, the stark realization was, and was shared with me, that most of the people on the investor side are not there to hear pitches. They are there to syndicate with the firms that are able to lead. So that led to this other realization that people had when they're doing their presentation, and there's 50 seats in this in this hall, and only you know 20% of them are full, and it's not necessarily with the investors, it's more with the competitors and the consultants who are you know interested in learning about that company. So that doesn't exist at MNBC. And I've been going for and sponsoring for around 20 years. And I can tell you that all the people who are there as investors are in the rooms listening to these presentations. And in many cases, even, being part of the people asking questions. So I find that to be a distinctive, totally unique to MNBC that really is special.
Yeah. Well, that's kind. And again, we've I think we've been working on perfecting or making it better every year, and that relentless pursuit to make it better with again the assistance and help of our sponsors. And I also want to give a little credit to my co-hosts, right? So Chris Lyons and Mike Sherman have been co-hosting with me for a while, and they're terrific in making sure that everything runs smoothly on the day of the event. And they also provide some useful and constructive feedback on ways we can make the event better every year. And so, in our relentless pursuit to try to make it better and more relevant every year, we really are looking for the right mix. And I'm happy to hear you feel the way you do because you're a sponsor, so you keep coming back. But you're not alone, right? We have a lot of other sponsors who keeps returning every year because I think they feel like they're getting something for their sponsorship dollar. And we, as I said, if we were not providing something constructive or useful to the entrepreneurs that are presenting or the other members in the audience, we wouldn't keep doing this just for our egos, right? We'd be doing it. We'd find something else to do with our money in your case and our time in my case.
Yeah. Right. So what are the dates? Give us some of the guidelines around, when you show up. I know there's a reception the night before the
Right.
event. So share that logistics for us. And then how do people find out about it? And my final kind of question is, does the meeting fill up? And are they going to be, turned away if they don't do it in time?
Yeah. So look, I think, first of all, mnbc.org is the website to go to. mnbc.org, O-R-G, is where you can find the all the information you need to know about this year's MNBC, including how to register for this year's MNBC. And it also has on the website instructions on how to get travel accommodations worked out, especially hotels. We have new preferred hotels this year. So we've been using an old Grand Hotel downtown that we've switched to a different hotel, newer accommodations. And so you'll see everything you need to know at the mnbc.org. But to preview it for you, so we'll have the conference goes on Tuesday, November the 4th, all day. We go all day, start early, go all day. And then we start again on Wednesday morning early and wrap up by noon so that everybody can catch their afternoon flights home. So most people come in because we start so early on Tuesday morning, the 4th. Most people will come in on Monday night, the 3rd, and they are welcome to join us for a networking event that night. And this year, that will be at a rooftop, indoor-outdoor venue on a rooftop of a hotel downtown called the Hyatt Centric. And it should be a great venue for us too. A little more room than we had
Yeah.
last year because
You've
it was
outgrown
warm in
that
there.
room for
We
sure.
outgrew the room, didn't we? And it was pretty warm in there last year.
Yes.
So we've been using that venue for quite some time. So it's always a good idea to look at fresh options. So this will be a better option, indoor-outdoor space. Let's hope for some good weather and cooler temperatures. So we should have that in early November. So that's on Monday night. And then we will start, as I said earlier, on the morning on Tuesday, go all day on Tuesday. Tuesday night, there'll be another networking event, and it'll also be downtown. And for those who are coming from out of town, you'll get your chance to sample some of Memphis's best barbecue. And we'll also be ordering a little more fried chicken than we ordered last year. I think we under-ordered the fried chicken. And
Gus's.
and
For
you're
those of
and
you
you're
who have not experienced Gus's, it's definitely should be on your list that of
yeah.
things to do when you're in Memphis.
Yeah, your taste buds will thank you. Your waistline, maybe not so much.
Right.
But you know what? It's not an everyday thing. So
Right.
so that's served on Tuesday night, and then we'll start again early on Wednesday, November the 5th, and wrap up, as I said, by noon. And in the process, if you stay from start to finish, gavel to gavel, you will you'll see 40 companies presenting in 2 different rooms at a time. You'll see panel discussions. We'll have an investor panel again this year, just like we always have. That's one of the more popular events. And I've invited, after missing for a year last year, I've invited Charles Hamilton from Piper Sandler to come back. I think his topic is going to be really relevant, like it always is, but maybe more so this year. He's going to be talking about the public and private equity environment and M&A environment for musculoskeletal companies. And the reason why I think it's going to be particularly relevant this year is there's a couple that have gotten public in the last few months. So it'd be interesting to hear. And Piper Sandler was one of the lead underwriters in those financings. So he has a firsthand account of how those went. So we're looking forward to having it. So that's what you'll see over the period of the come in on Monday night, leave on Wednesday. So for your 2-day commitment to come here, you'll see a lot of exciting things. And the last thing at the very end, if you need to stay at the very end, because the reason why is we draw 2 free tickets to the final day at the Masters. Always a popular thing, but you got to be present to win at the closing session. And Drue, you'll be the one, like you have been in the last few years, you'll be the one drawing one name out of the basket, one business card out, and the winner will be awarded 2 free tickets to the final day at the Masters golf tournament for 2026. So that's always been a very exciting and popular thing. Drew.
And one
We
year
appreciate.
you were able to go because of a
Yeah.
very last minute cancellation. And what was that experience like?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, I wanted to take my son and he couldn't go, but so I took my favorite brother-in-law. He's a big golf fan and knew even more about golf than I do. And a couple of geeky nerds walking around the golf course citing our favorite radio or TV broadcast quote that happened on certain green, like the 16th green, when Jack Nicklaus sunk that long putt I think it was his 16th green, and Vern Lundquist, as the ball goes in, he goes, "Yes, sir." Well, that happened at the at Augusta National, and we walked up to the 18th green, and we both go, "This is the 18th green." Yes, sir. So uh, it was just a great venue. It's a for everybody that's uh, won those tickets, Drew. They've always really treasured the experience of taking a friend, family member, loved one, whatever, with them. And
Mhm.
it was a oddity. I only got it the one time, and I never would have taken you up on it were it not for the fact that it was so last minute we couldn't find somebody else to do it.
That's
But
right.
it was
That's
a
right.
it was a great event.
Yeah, so this past year, it was Sean Curry, who was the chief commercial officer at Onkos, who won. Year before, it was Leah Winter, the CEO of Winter Innovations. So, those people who are there presenting, actually, you gotta be there, be present to win at the closing ceremony. And we've had a few upsets where we're pulling names out, reading names, and they just left. It's been
Well,
really fun.
my favorite moment on that was when we pulled the name out and they had just left, and it was an attorney. And when we pulled out the backup name, the attorney's client won.
Oh, right.
And one of the great moments of attorney client relationships, the attorney had their name drawn left so that their client could win. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Except we know because they're attorney, they didn't do it on purpose, right? It was just
Yeah, right.
purely accidental.
I'm sure. Yeah, so really, I mean, it's really a generous
Yeah.
sponsorship thing that you've done over the years. We're forever grateful, of
Well, it's
course.
funny,
And
I started it probably over 15 years ago, and everyone after that was like, "You're doing it again, right?" And so I kinda got bullied into it, and I haven't been able to undo it.
the closest thing I can tell you is on that is like these guitars, right? I gave away these guitars for like 3 or 4 years, and I thought, well, maybe I should. People probably are getting tired of them, so I'll do something else. And the people I selected to be panelists, for example, are on the receiving end of whatever I give away. Well, that year I gave away something else, and
I
they were
know, I have
counting on.
one, and I don't and it's this tiny little plaque with little Gibson guitar on it. It's
And
not bad.
I gave, I gave that away. And they go, wait, where's my guitar? For those of you who don't know, in the audience that don't know, the guitar that I'm pointing to over my shoulder and over Drew's right shoulder, those are giveaways that we give away to our sponsors as well as to our panelists. They're cheaper than honorariums, so we make them a guitar. But on those guitars, they're a piece of folk art, and they're just a piece of cardboard. I say just, I mean, it's a beautiful piece of art, actually. A painted piece of cardboard that has on it reject parts that I collect every year from our sponsor groups and sometimes from companies. There are companies now who presented MNVC. I don't know if you know this, but some of the companies that presented MNVC send me their reject parts because they want their reject
Wow.
parts to be on our piece of art for the following year, which is really cool. So, yeah, so if you look at the guitars, they've got pedicle screws on them.
Yeah.
They've got
Cervical plates, you got all kinds of great
cervical
stuff.
plates.
By the way, they're not cardboard, they're actually plywood, so they're sturdy.
I meant to say plywood. If I
I knew
said
you did.
cardboard, I got
Yeah,
it
I knew
wrong.
you did.
Sorry about that. They're
No, you're
plywood.
good.
No, they're not cardboard. You're right.
Yeah. No, they
Yeah.
are each one is a one of a kind. It's dated, it has the initials of the sponsor presenter, and, I mean, they're treasured. I have one, we'll probably show it on the screen that, one of the walls in there, with, like, a pyramid. I've shared it with you before. We just had
Right.
too many. We didn't wanna lose the shape, so we put the overflow in my office. But they are really
That's where I
cool.
got this idea. I saw you sent me what you had done with your pyramid, and that's why when we moved into this house about 3 years ago, I put that up immediately. And that's just three. That's just five of them, right? I've
Yeah,
got probably. I mean, I've got one for every year that we've done it, so
yeah,
I
yeah.
think I've got over a dozen of them.
No, they're quite a conversation starter, and, you can imagine over my right shoulder, every time I'm doing a Zoom call or Teams call, someone asks me if I play the guitar, which I have to say I do not,
I,
but then
I'm
I
the
get
same
to
way.
explain what it is. So MNVC gets a shameless plug on almost every Teams call I do, which is many.
Isn't that great? That makes me feel great. The friend of mine who conceived of that idea presented it to me. He's passed away since then, and I always acknowledge his important contribution to what we to the real cultural and the environment of MNBC, because that's one way that we've created some cultural thing that I think really resonates from year over year. We miss Norman. He had a great idea when he did that, and Norman Adcox is his name. We miss him a lot, but the idea, this legacy continues on every year because people love it so much.
Yeah.
And those people who didn't get it that year, they'll never forgive me for it.
Well, you just sort of preempted what I was gonna say about you, Gary, because I think what you have created and sustained with MNVC is truly a a legacy that is immeasurable, and I think will continue long after you pass on to glory, because it is something that has been profoundly valuable, not just for startups that, that have done well and some that maybe struggled, but really, as I said earlier, about the relationships that are formed through the venue and the culture that you've created. So I just want to personally thank you for what MNVC has meant to me. And I just want to thank you for continuing it even after, you shut the doors of MB Venture Partners and moved on to Healthpoint, because it is truly sort of a gem within the industry. So thank you for all that you do and your contribution to the community.
Terribly kind of you to say that. Again, I couldn't do it without the loyal sponsors of groups like the DeAngelis groups and the DeAngelis group and others. We've been blessed. I think it's been a great time to be in this space, hasn't it? I mean, 25 years, this last 25 years, we've seen a lot. Nobody was talking about robotics, for example, and the OR until I think it was Maurice Ferre came to MNBC in 20. I think his first presentation was in 2007 or 8. I mean, we've seen a lot of things. That's just one example. All the stuff that we're talking about now over the years is pretty different than what it was when we first started it out. But it would never still be here today. The MNBC would not still be here today without the help of our loyal sponsors. So, Drue, you should pat yourself on the back as much as you're patting me on the back for what we've collectively put together as a
Yeah.
group, all of us,
Well, you're
to
very
have this
humble,
event.
but I have to disagree with you on that point, because it takes a leader, takes a visionary, and so you have been in that seat, and so without you, it would have been impossible. So thank you again. Thank you for joining today on this OTW pod. I think people truly enjoy getting to hear some of your story and insights, and so just personally, again, thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in November at the MNVC.
Can't wait to see you and TJ back there again this year. And thank you so much for this opportunity this morning to talk to your audience at OTW. It's really been a pleasure, Drue. Look forward to seeing you in Memphis at the beginning of November.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks so much.